So let's talk about the appearance and development of discrete emotions. These are those emotions that do tend to be universal. One thing that's really interesting is that even with very young infants, we as adults actually tend to be very good at being able to distinguish these different emotional cues. So we can look at an infant and we're pretty good at being able to determine, is this infant happy? Are they sad? Are they angry? And those sorts of things. We also tend to be better at differentiating different positive emotional cues. So we're actually better at being able to tell the difference between happiness and interest than we are at differentiating and distinguishing negative emotional cues, such as being able to quickly differentiate the difference between anger and fear. Now I want you to think about this for a minute and think about, why would that possibly be the case? Hmm. Well, one thing that has been proposed is really related to how we tend to react to these different emotions. We tend to react very differently from positive emotions than we do from negative emotions. With positive emotions, we tend to smile and be very interactive, and we really like it when we have this cute, adorable little baby who's just happy and smiling and is happy to see us and giggling. Now, think about how we typically react to these negative emotions. So if you have a child who's fearful, what is it that they do? Well, they start crying. They start screaming. And when we are experiencing these types of behaviors, we tend to want to react very quickly to try to extinguish those negative emotions, because we don't want our infants to be experiencing them. We want them to be happy. There are some researchers who also believe that there is a biological component to this also, even an evolutionary component. Because we do know that when we are experiencing positive emotions, there's a lot of very positive chemicals that are being released in our body. It's very good for us cognitively. Whereas when we are experiencing some of these negative emotions and these negative experiences, well, there are a lot of other types of chemicals, such as cortisol, that are being really released into our system, and those have been found to have really negative long-term effects. So we tend to react very, very differently. So when we are looking at positive emotions, we actually have more time to take in those cues, process them, and try to figure out what emotion it may be. Whereas when there are these negative emotional cues, usually the first reaction is to try to extinguish it. So we are not spending as much time trying to figure out what those negative emotional cues are, because we're trying to react more quickly. Let's take a look some more at these discrete emotions and how they develop. There are a couple of different types of emotion, but we're going to focus on our primary or basic emotions. These are biologically programmed emotions. They're either present at birth or they emerge during the first year. Most of them do emerge during the first 6 months of age, but generally, when we're talking about these emotions, they're the ones that will appear over the first year. Over that period of time, they do change due to the environment. So what we experience as basic emotions at first can change over time depending on what we experience from the environment. Early on in life, of course, a lot of that has to do with our relationships with our parents and the experiences that we have with our parents, because that really is the world that is really focusing on us. At birth, babies do show a number of facial expressions. These tend to be interest, distress, disgust, and contentment. And over time, what we find is that some of our other basic emotions start to appear, usually around between 4 and 6 months of age. Anger, sadness, joy, surprise, and fear. Usually by 6 months of age, those are in place, and then some more complex emotions will start to develop. Let's look at these emotional milestones really quickly. At birth, what we really are looking at is what's considered attraction and withdrawal. So we tend to be attracted to stimuli that are pleasant, and we tend to want to withdraw from stimuli that are negative. There are some that will even say that this exists before birth, when an infant, or rather a fetus, is in utero, particularly in the later stages of pregnancy. This attraction and withdrawal really is completely inborn. These emotions are developing over time. By the time an infant is 2 to 3 months of age, now they're starting to be awake a little bit more than newborns. Newborns do sleep a lot. And now you start seeing a social smile. You start seeing them respond to facial expressions from those around them. So you really are starting to see some interaction based on what's going on in the environment. At 3 to 4 months of age, now you see that infants are starting to laugh at active stimuli. And I have to tell you, it is so cute to see them laugh for the first time and to hear them. And now you can take a toy or a rattle and you can wiggle it and do other silly things, and they will actually start laughing as a result of that. Prior to this, you'll find this reaction in terms of an attraction to it, but you don't really have this active laugh. At about 6 to 8 months of age, now you're really being able to see anger, fear, as well as attachment. We're going to talk about attachment in more detail later on in the semester, but it really is a very important milestone for later development and later outcomes. At 8 to 12 months of age, social referencing is really emerging. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And about 18 to 30 months, now we're seeing some more of the self-conscious emotions, things like shame, guilt, and pride.